Okay, here we go. Now we can begin. Thank you. L'chaim. Okay, so in the first 5 chapters of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe discusses into the soul. We mainly focus on the godly soul. It comes from part of God, and it has its 10 faculties and its 3 methods of expression: thought, speech, and action. Machshava, dibur, ma'aser. And then we said when a person learns Torah, that's the most amazing thing because you're becoming united with God, and it's uplifted and it's utopia. You know what the problem is? We only discussed one soul. But if you remember from chapter 1, a person has 2 souls. And each soul has a separate consciousness. It's not like, the one soul sitting there on the side, quiet. Each soul has its say. So the godly soul wants to learn Torah. An animal soul wants to eat hamburgers. Well, it depends what kind of animal soul. Okay. Sometimes animal soul can get to that point. So this is, if you remember when we started Tanya, we discussed everyone suffers from multiple personality disorder. Everybody has this issue. You have the drive inside of you to do something more godly, and you have the drive inside of you to do something more selfish. Now, your animal soul, it's true we call it an animal soul, and it sounds very derogatory and very belittling. Are you calling me an animal? Remind me of my 5th grade teacher, right? Yeah. You're an animal. They say in Yiddish, wilde chaya, wild beast. So the truth is, and this is something a gist of Tanya, an approach of Tanya, approach of Chassidus is, the world itself is not bad. The world itself isn't the problem. The problem is really how you use it. So the world exists as it does. So if godliness was open and aware, there would be no freedom of choice. Right? Because in the presence of godliness, how could you choose something else? So the angels don't have freedom of choice because they're constantly in the presence of God. So in order to facilitate freedom of choice, or put it this way, continuing what we spoke about in the previous class about relationships. When you're in a relationship, you can't just dictate the terms of relationship 100% of the time. If you do that, it's not a relationship. I'm sure there's a psychology term for it. You lock a person up. Those people lock, but I love them, so I'm locking them up in the closet. I don't let them leave, and I only give them to eat. That's not a relationship. There's something wrong with that person. In a relationship, you have to leave space for the other person. So you have to put yourself aside. So in a healthy friendship, in a healthy marriage, you have to put yourself aside a little bit. You have to hide yourself in order to allow for the other person to exist. Now you might say, "But I'm so awesome. Why should I hide my greatness?" You're right. You're 100% awesome. But in order for the other person to be in a relationship with Your Highness, you need to do so. So Hashem is absolutely great and absolutely awesome. But in order for Him to be in a relationship, in order to allow us to exist, to serve Him, that a serving means there has to be a choice to serve Him. There has to be a choice between the bagels and the kosher cream cheese and the cheeseburger. There has to be that choice. If there's no choice, then there's not service. Like North Korea, they don't have a choice. I think, don't they have elections there? One person on the ballot?
Yeah, one box.
The best line was Yaakov Smirnov's.
Which is?
American Express. He says, here in America, you have American Express. You don't leave home without it. In Russia, we have Russian Express. Don't leave home.
Don't leave home. Exactly. Or Reagan told that joke. The Russian and the American were speaking. The Russian said, American said, "I have democracy." The Russian said, "What's democracy? I can go into to my President Reagan's desk. I can slam my fist on his desk and say, 'I don't like the way you're doing that job.'" The Russian said, "Oh, I can do that too." Really? He said, "Oh yeah, I can walk into the Red Square, the Kremlin. I can go off to Gorbachev's desk and I can slam my fist and say, 'I don't like the way Reagan does his job.'" Right. That's a Reagan joke. So this concealment, this withdrawal, right? It's not really withdrawal. You're hiding yourself. That's called klippa. If you remember, we touched on this concept before, right?
Klippa was like the shell, right?
Right, yeah. Klippa. Klippa means a shell. It's a covering. So in one way it's bad, because I'm not getting to experience the real you. On the other hand, it's protective. Now the problem is when the thing you're concealing is good, is godliness, then the I don't want to call it collateral damage, but a byproduct or a possible outcome can be is that people can do things. So almost for example, sorry, it's lighting up. I don't know. My kids are in the show. My girls are in the show, trashing the place. Hopefully they're cleaning up. My phone rings. You know what it
I
is.
saw someone there. I thought they were just trying to hijack your U-Haul trucks.
Yeah, for sure. That's what they were.
So you just kept trying.
Yeah.
Everybody's good.
Yeah. Good luck. You know, someone did
Right
steal.
next door to the
Someone did
police
steal.
substation. I don't understand why you won't.
By the way, you know, someone did steal a truck.
Someone stole a truck?
Rented and never returned it.
Really?
Yeah,
That's not stealing. That's
false address, false everything. Yeah.
Well, fake credit card?
Fake license and everything. Yeah. Anyway, so the
Kind of broken.
exactly. So the idea is like this. So the idea is like this. You send your kid off to school, to high school, to college, and you want him to make good decisions. You want him to do the right thing, but you have to give him independence to grow. But with the possibility of independence, he can make stupid decisions. So you holding back, you not being a helicopter parent, that's called klippa. So is klippa bad? It depends how you look at it. Klippa is bad because
Well, we have a helicopter plant.
my daughter is. Yeah.
With children, not only do we want to be a helicopter parent and swoop in and prevent the problem, we also want to resist that and stand by and watch them make mistakes because it's another way of growing. Some mistakes they have to make on their own.
So the mistake is painful. The mistake is bad. So it's
It's much more painful for the parent than it is for
right.
the
So,
child.
and by the way, now you can understand exactly where we're going into Rosh.
Anyways.
You're going into Rosh Hashanah, exactly. It's a lot more painful for the parent than it is for God than it is for us. So klippa is bad because it conceals the obvious good. Klippa is necessary. So if you remember, there are two types of klippa. There's something that can be utilized and some things that cannot be utilized. So let's take the kids for example. You tell your kids, stay away from drugs. Why are you telling your kids that? Because drugs are bad for you. They can't be good. Now you don't tell your kids stay away from fire. You tell your kids be careful with fire. It's different. Because fire can be used for good.
Yeah.
You just have to be careful with it. So klippa, similarly, is like drugs and fire. The three wholly impure klippas are drugs. Methamphetamines, whatever it is, fentanyl. Stay away. That's why, for example, why can't we eat cheeseburgers? Why can't we eat pork? I mean, think about it. If God allowed us to eat an animal, does he really care which animal it is? I mean, come on. Animal's an animal. It's because...
I have cheese on my burgers almost every time I have burgers.
Huh?
I have cheese on my burgers every time I have a burger.
It's important to note that he's a vegetarian. By the way, I actually had fake Impossible Meat, whatever it is, the other day. So you tell your kid. So it was why can't you eat pork, for example? It's because God is telling you, the manufacturer of the world is telling you that there's nothing good in here. For you, there's nothing good. Stay away. Now you could do it anyway, yeah, but if you're trying to be a productive, contributing human being, you could do it. Like I once heard a comedian say, you could go skydiving, doesn't make it a smart thing to do. Which, by the way, I'm going skydiving, right? So
This one wants to go skydiving.
I do.
I've been, it's fun.
Yeah. So klipas nega means you got to be careful. It's easily corruptible, and if you don't be careful, it can get out of hand, out of control. Now, the problem with klipas nega is it's exactly like fire. You imagine telling a fire, oh, no, burn that wood, don't burn this wood. Once the fire is out of control, it's out of control. And we're going to learn this in Tanya. If you need to eat. Eating is not bad. You need to sleep. Sleeping is not bad. All these things, eating, sleeping, are all klipas nega, which means the godliness can be utilized. It can be utilized for good. The problem is, and this is why it's called the animal soul. Just like an animal never knows when to stop. You never go over to a cow and say, no, I'm going to hold off on the grass. Watching, looked at myself in the mirror and, my waist is just too big. Animals don't know. Isn't it something like a horse eats apples, kills itself? Something like, isn't that something? Or is that only in the cartoons? A horse doesn't know when to stop eating? Or literally eat itself to death or something?
Dogs will literally eat themselves to death.
So the animal doesn't know when to stop. This is why the soul is called an animal soul, because it doesn't say, okay, you need to eat, but only one portion, or only this amount. You want an approved? Come to Kiddush in the shul, and you'll see people serve themselves a tremendous amount of food, and you're like, that's way more than you need. But this is how our nefesh bahamis, our animal soul, functions in life. So you need to be careful with it. So this is but obviously we'll learn inside eventually. But jumping ahead, the perfect person is to find a balance between utilizing his body for productive purposes. The body is good, but it has to be corralled. It has to be channeled, right? Otherwise, it can be if left by itself, it can be destructive. By the way, there's a story I heard on the radio today, in BBC radio, that there's a zoo somewhere in the world. I can't remember where. The lady came inside. I think it was a lady came inside to brush her to clean the rhino. The rhino charged, killed her, and injured some other guy.
What a surprise.
And I thought to myself, and they're very surprised because it never reacted that way. But the animal is an animal.
It's another animal.
That's what it is. It's an animal. So you can't not expect it. I know the double negative. Or you have to expect it to act like an animal. Although it didn't act like an animal before. Later on, I think in chapter 17, 18, the Alter Rebbe is going to address the guy who doesn't understand why doesn't serving God come natural to me? Why isn't it easy? Because you have an animal inside of you, and the animal is an animal. Chocolate cake? Good! That's normal. Congratulations, you're normal. Okay, let's get into the text. Right? I apologize for not bringing it on. Okay, V'hine, page 99 in the old print. What page are we in the new print? 101. V'hine zeh le'umah zeh asa Elokim. This is a quote from Kohelet. This is a quote from King Solomon. King Solomon, his wisdom, said, Hashem created the world in perfect balance. Everything that exists in the good also exists in the bad. Not only that, everything that exists on land also exists in the sea. Everything in the world is in a perfect balance. Everything. So whatever you see in the power for good, there's also a power for bad. So let's give an example. Can't do too much text inside Eric's number. Let's give an example. We find in the olden times, in the elder days, there was prophecy. And now there's no prophecy. What happened? How come there's no prophecy anymore? People aren't righteous enough? But we find another thing. The Talmud points out that you see it because you see it all through the text of the Torah, that idolatry was a big issue. And it says, you look at the book of Judges, you look throughout in the book of Kings, and they turn to idolatry. And you think to yourself, what is with these people bowing down to, they weren't bowing down to football players, and some of them bowing down to trees and to animals, to stones, and you think to yourself, so one thought might pop into your mind, they're a bunch of mindless idiots. Uga Chaka, some David Koresh, or no, these people weren't stupid idiots. These were intelligent people.
Is Rabbi from Waco?
No, it's the wacko from Waco. the way I called it.
Well, let's Google to see if there's Chabad in Waco, huh?
I've been to Waco.
Yeah.
No, Waco.
No,
That's what I called it when I was there.
Oh, yeah.
Eyes too close together, teeth too far apart. Just saying.
There's a reason why it happened where it happened, huh? I got you. So what were we talking about now?
Wake up.
So the reason is,
Intelligent people who.
so the rabbis in the Talmud explain,
Idolatry.
the rabbis in the Talmud explain is that everything in the world is a balance. So at one time there was a tremendous drive for idolatry, but we don't comprehend it. But to balance that tremendous drive for idolatry, or you can put it in different words, there was a tremendous drive for spirituality, and many people directed it in the wrong way. So to combat, there was a prophet, because a prophet was a spiritual person, and his job was to tell the people, listen, it's great that you have this drive for spirituality, but instead of bowing down to these tangible objects, the sun, the moon, or whatever it is, we have to worship this invisible God. Once God, let's not get into why that happened or how it happened, so to speak, removed that drive from humanity for idolatry, God also removed the medicine for it. Everything in the world exists in a perfect balance. Makes sense? Okay, sits well. Okay, ki, back inside, just like the godly soul. Klula is made up, spheres kedushos is made up of 10 holy spheres. Remember, we learned that the godly soul has 7 intellectual, 7 emotional, and the 10 faculties want to utilize its 3 forms of expression: thought, speech, and action for Torah and mitzvot. Kach nefesh sitter achra, so too the nefesh of the other side. Now it's interesting, by the way, in the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe usually many times use 2 terms which are many times interchangeable, but they're not exactly the same thing. Similar, not exactly the same thing. One is klippa, and one is sitter achra. Klippa means a shell covering. Sitter achra means, this is a lot more literal, a lot more hard line, the other side. Because klippa is not necessarily bad. It obscures God. You decide what it is. Sitter achra is bad. Why? Because if you're not directing it for productivity, if you're not directing in the service of God, it's bad. So, like I've said before, I actually went to speak to high school kids last week. Some of the kids there were my students. I taught 6th grade, 5th grade. And there was a guy talking. He was doing something. He said, "I'm just." So I asked one of my students, "You remember what I said in my class? The word just is a curse word. What does just mean? It's a terrible word. What does just mean? I'm not doing good. I'm not doing bad. I'm somewhere in between. That's not true. There's no gray area. I'm just. So either you're being productive or you're not. There's no... In reality, if you want to be objective about it, there is no gray area. So we many times we think about life. We think about like the things you're not allowed to do, killing, stealing, right? Then there are things you have to do, like tefillin, Shabbat, right? And then there's having a beer. What are you doing? The Budweiser commercial? Nothing. Chilling, watching the game, having a beer, having a bud. What's that? Remember that commercial?
What's that?
So, do nothing. The Torah doesn't look at a person, you're here just to do nothing. Hashem is perfect. And Hashem created you for a purpose. And every moment that you're here, you have a purpose. So there's no such thing as you just. So the Alter Rebbe, the line that he draws in the sand, so to speak, is either you're doing or you're not. If you remember the story I told you with Shmuel Munkis, when Alter Rebbe was going to get arrested, the Russians came to arrest the Alter Rebbe, and Alter Rebbe escaped at the back door with one of his students, and he asked him, "Should I allow myself to be arrested?" Now, obviously, we're talking about a great holy man who, I don't know how to rightly explain it, but the laws of nature don't apply to him the way it applies to us. So he can ask such a question. Shmuel Munk is told, if you're a tzaddik, if you're a saintly, godly person, what are you worried about? The forces of impurity can't harm you. You're godly. And if you're full of garbage, then what right do you have to write in the book that you can't enjoy? Because what's enjoyment? Enjoyment means not committing a crime, not necessarily doing anything. Having a good time, right? This is what he does here. After everyone realized he was right, and he went back and he was arrested. So you see, kach nefesh is the soul of the other side. Miklipas nega is from the klipa, the shell that can shine through, the godliness that can shine through. Hamislabeshes bedam adam. It clothes itself in the blood of a person. And the klula, it's made up. It consists me'eser kisun the misabusa. This is a quote of the Zohar. The 10 crowns of impurity. So the faculties of klip are called crowns in Kabbalah. Shehin sheva midas rois are 7 evil characters. So let's say, for example, a guy comes, asks you for tzedakah. So you give him tzedakah. That's your godly soul, expressing it nicely, well. But let's say, for example, a person who, I'll give an extreme example. Chesed, for example, is the desire to connect. Let's say a person tries to connect with someone he's not supposed to. A married woman, for example, right? That's chesed. That's a bad chesed. There's good chesed, and there's bad chesed. In everything, right? Then there's good gevura, good discipline, and bad discipline. Right? When someone needs help and you hold back, that's bad discipline. Where does the bad discipline come? It doesn't come from the godly soul. It comes from an animal soul. And if you remember going back to chapter 1, we learned about the 4 elements. Everything. So you have you have your character traits. So you have passion for good. That's the element of fire. Then you have anger, and that's bad. Then you have dirt, which is heavy. That's laziness. It's going to be firm. So it all depends on what it is. So habois, and it's going to comes from the 4 elements we discussed earlier in chapter 1. And you have the seichel hamelidin, and then you have the seichel, the intellect, that gives birth. What does it mean gives birth? Because remember we spoke about in chapter 3, you can't have an emotion without an intellectual understanding. Even if the intellectual understanding is wrong, but it's still an intellectual understanding. Like I told this story, the guy who thought the mayor is a bad guy because he looked mean, even though he never met him. But in his mind, the mayor looked like a bad guy. So he was surprised that the mayor voted in favor of Chabad. That's an emotion based on intellect. So this intellect, chachma, binadas, makar midas, because the chachma, conception, contemplation, and application are the source of the midas. Now the midas. Now interesting. Alter Rebbe is going to teach us something psychological. Your emotions are in line with your intellect. If you have an appreciation for finer things, you'll love finer things. You go to a kid and you say, you want this $100 bill? I want this chocolate. He takes the chocolate.
Depends on the age of the kid.
Depends on the age of the kid.
Depends on the age.
Your kids don't need a $100 bill, they have your credit card.
Do you know what chocolate they can buy? The $100 bills? My kids aren't schmucks, you know?
Right. Inflation, Daddy, give me another 100.
Calvin would probably take a chocolate.
Calvin take a chocolate. Right. Yeah.
Asher probably take the $100 bill.
Probably. But the idea is why? Good example. Because your emotions are in line with your intellect. What you understand is how you react. Because a minor, a child, a child expressing the midah of chesed, right? I want, that's chesed. When I want something, I can connect to it, and he has things of little value, right? I remember when I was a little kid, my brother wanted to pay me to put flyers. His wife was opening a playgroup. He wanted me to go and put flyers in every mailbox. Now in New York, it's not a mailbox like this. I gotta go walk up the stairs, and he was gonna pay me with a pack of gum.
But that's the beginning of a negotiation.
Negotiation, right?
It's
Right.
a bad beginning.
Right.
It's a beginning.
Right. He thought
Every story starts there.
correctly so. My brother's an idiot. and because my brother's an idiot, therefore I can brag with him. So the kids, they like small things. Why? It's just lefisha sichle katan, because their intellect is small. The cuts are short. Lahasik dvarim yikarim, to appreciate more valuable things. Yasim mehem. I mean, give an example which I don't really relate to. So you go to a painting, right? Oh, that's a regular painting. But you go to like a modern art, a line, a dot, a circle. Oh, that already you have to be, right? Like the guy, the joke, the guy who came into money, and he knows when you're rich, you own art. He goes into a gallery. He says, "I want to buy a nice painting." So you see this painting. He says, "Is this what everyone's into?" Modern art. What is it? It is what you want it to be. The line this way, and the line that way, and the circle, a triangle. Next year comes in. I want to buy a better piece of art. So he says, "You see this one? It has one line and one circle, one triangle, and it's abstract." The next year he comes in. I want to buy something even more nice. Just a plain white canvas with a dot. Guys, it's too busy. It's too. Right? Huh?
I heard it another. The dot is there. What do you call this person? What do you call this picture? The guy says, a Jew in a Christian world.
There you go. It's a good one. Never know before. So based on your intellect, that's your emotion. Also, the minor will get angry and vexed by trivial things. And be boastful of small things that we see in the Torah. When Yosef was 17 years old, what was he into? Let's see if you remember your Bible class. When he was 17 years old, he was here and made sure he was good looking. When you're 17 years old, you was walking by the mirror.
I thought he was always into studying Torah.
But when he was in Egypt,
And dream reader.
Okay.
that's a few stories. But he was in Egypt, and his master made him in control of the whole house. Now I'm in control. I have to look good. What's that line? When you're in your 20s, you think everyone's looking at you. In your 30s, you think some people moving. In your 40s or 50s, I forgot what it was, you realize no one was ever looking at you. Right? Right. So kids, they brag about the, what does Jackie Mason say about a Jew when he gets a boat? He doesn't actually like a boat. He just has to show his neighbors that he has a boat. Come here, see my boat? Good, let's get out of here. Right? Now the Esir Bechinas Elu, these 10 levels, Kishadam Mechashev, when a person thinks, speaks, or does, so his thought in his brain, his words in his mouth, or his hands, or whichever organ he's using, it becomes a tool for impurity. So when sometimes what we like to do is, maybe this is good. 10 days of repentance is coming. Like the distance, that's not me. That's that other guy. The fact of the matter is, when you utilize your body for something impure, you're working in the mud. You get dirty. That's just the way it is. So now think about it. When we think, do, or say something that's improper or holy, and we become a tool for whatever that act is. Let me bring up a point. This is a controversial point. Why did God punish the Egyptians? God predicted to Abraham that his children would be slaves in a strange land, and they would be slaves. They'd be oppressed. And then God says, "And then I'm going to judge them." But you predicted it. I don't understand. Why are they being punished? They did exactly what you predicted was going to happen. No? What say you? I don't know. That's the way the story goes. You're going to ruin the whole Passover now? I already had separate sets of dishes. Now you tell me?
Slams blood for nothing.
It's like, what? So they took jet skis across the river? Come on. So the answer, one of the answers, there are many answers given to this question. One of the answers given is God didn't decide who was going to be the nation that oppresses them. He just said a nation is going to oppress them. The fact that the Egyptians made the choice to be the tool for the wickedness, that's why. That they did that on free choice. Yeah, it's true. Had the Egyptians not oppressed them, another nation would have. It's almost like I put the food on the table, cookies. I predict that one of you guys are going to take it. Who takes it? I don't know. Well, God does know, but so God made a prediction that the Egyptians didn't have to oppress the Jewish people; that they did on their own volition. But because they became a tool for the oppression, they got punished. So when we make a bad mistake, I'll tell you a story happened. I don't know if Itcha told you the story. My brother-in-law Itcha, at his work last week, a guy who is working at his company. My brother-in-law works for Iberia Foods, and a guy who works there is a truck driver for 18 years. For some reason, went over to Itcha's car and slashed 2 of his tires. For what? My brother-in-law Itcha works in the office. He's in upper management. He has nothing to do with the. He has nothing.
His tires are slashed.
No, he has nothing to do with the truck drivers. His job is to make sure the company. He doesn't pay the bill. I'm saying he's just to make sure that the truck and the business runs well. He doesn't decide. He doesn't hire. He doesn't fire. He doesn't pay bills. People don't know him.
He's in the office.
He's in the office. Why?
Did they know it was his car then? Or
No.
was it just a random act?
I think it was, but they caught him on camera. So they asked him, because they caught him on camera. So they asked the guy, "Why'd you do it?" "I don't know. I don't know. It's not me. The devil got a hold of me." So I sometimes have these immature impulses. So you see I'll show you the text after class. So sometimes.
Did he punch him in the face? Is this story end well? Or?
No,
That's it?
he self-fired himself.
After 18 years, what?
No, he walked away. 18 years he worked for the company. And one day, I don't know what he did. And no one truly understands why. And out of all the people, why my brother-in-law's car, who, if you know Itcha, he's not a loud guy. He comes in, comes out. Out of all the people to slash his tire. Why? And he passed a bunch of other cars on the way. We don't get it. So many times, the fact of the matter is, when you make a bad decision.
Maybe a nice tire.
Yeah. Well, my brother-in-law.
Show his tires here. I'm getting it.
My brother-in-law got 2 new tires out of it. So I told my brother-in-law, I said, "Tell him I'm driving over." Right? I have a joke for you, not for the class though. So the point is, what we do is, sometimes we try to distance ourselves, but the fact of the matter is, when we make a bad decision, and also a good decision, you are a tool for whatever you decide at that moment. And a person that makes a bad decision, right now you are invested in that act. He's saying, your being, your entity, whether it's your thought, machshava, dibur, ma'aseh, what you did, your thought, your speech, or your action is invested in the garments of impurity. So now there's a note on the bottom over here, comparison. You see the Alter Rebbe? Let's learn that note. Comparison in the Alter Rebbe's description here, the faculties and animal soul, with the description in chapter 3, where he talks about the animal, the divine soul, we see some significant differences. In chapter 3, the intellect are given first, and here the emotions are given first. In both cases, the intellect is the source of the emotion. Yet in chapter 3, explained that the intellect gives birth to the emotion, the midot. Here it stated the midot are commensurate with the quality of the seichel. So which one is it? So the note is very interesting. So when you're doing the right thing, why do we do bad things? Why do we do stupid things? Because we don't think. That's usually the case. We get emotionally attached. Right? In the supermarket, what do? They put the impulse buy, they get emotionally attached. Try to get you before you think. We realize the salesmen are constantly talking, and they just want you to do something. They want you to buy it, and you don't get a chance to think. It's only afterwards you think to yourself, What did I just do? I didn't even want that. I don't even need it, right? So when you do something stupid, it's because you're not thinking. So the divine soul is all about intellect. You appreciate it. I mean, you understand it, and then you appreciate it. The animal soul functions the direct opposite. The animal soul functions as, let me first make him want it, and then he'll think to himself, not if I want it, how do I get it? So you obviously need your intellect, because you can want ice cream. That's a good idea. Let's have ice cream. You can want ice cream, but the intellect has to think, okay, how am I going to get ice cream? Am I going to, with the freezer, am I going to go to the store? So every act you do necessitates both intellect and emotion. The question is, what's primary, what's secondary? Or what is setting off the chemical reaction? The divine soul's method or modus operandi is intellect, then emotion. The animal soul is the opposite, because think about it. Do you really need a hamburger? Really? No. You want it. And that's what he says. The variations arise from the fundamental differences between the nature of the divine soul and the animal soul. The divine soul is essentially intellective. Adam. We are called Adam. We find in the Torah 4 languages for man, for human beings. Adam, Ish, Gever, Enosh. They represent different levels of how the human being expresses himself. The highest one is Adam. Adam means Adam el Elyon, similar to above. So the person thinks first, acts second. One of those people that they're very impulsive. It's ready, fire, aim. Right, but a person is Adam. It's supposed to be Adam. Adam el Elyon, similar to above. Intellect first. The animal soul, on the other hand, is essentially and instinctively passionate. It inclines naturally towards physical pleasures and not need to ponder the desirability in order to desire them. Here, the seichel serves merely to steer and channel the development of the emotion. Therefore, this general quality of the midot reflects and commensurate with the state of the seichel. And we'll finish off over here. Sorry, next actually note. Let's read the note today. But what sort of thoughts, words, and actions are the garments of the animal soul? So earlier in chapter 4, we learned the divine soul has specific thoughts, Torah, which it clothes itself. Are we then to understand the animal soul also has specific garments? And Al Rebbe says no. So basically, what's going on is you have the palmetto in the morning, the 75 with the palmetto, and everyone. That's what's happening. You have your godly soul has its drive for Torah, and your animal soul its drive for, but it can only express itself in one way. You only have one thought, speech, and action. Unless you're a politician, you can't say 2 things at once. So all thoughts, words, and acts are not directed towards God and service of God, even though they are not actually sinful, are garments of klippa. In Al Rebbe's words, the anything that we do, which are vanity. Vanity means we're wasteful. The truth of the matter is, if you look at yourself in the mirror, you know what's productive, what's not. You know. Sometimes you have an extra burger, you're like, should not have eaten that, right? Sometimes it's a little bit. It's a little bit later. Anything that's not productive, taviru derucha, is the ruination of the spirit. And the Alter Rebbe is going to get into it. It could be a thought. So Alter Rebbe in chapter 6 lays down the law, lays down the line. Either you're doing, someone told me a great line once: get busy living or get busy dying. The nefesh halakis is living. Nefesh Bahamas is dying. What does that mean? Because this is why the godly soul, its acts are eternal. Because the Torah is eternal. You can pass it on. What does the animal soul desire for? So let's say you had a delicious lunch, right? Delicious potato knish for lunch. You're hungry again. The animal soul is in constant state of need because it doesn't have any real substance. Something of real substance is something you can pass on, something you can hold on to, something you can take with you, knowledge you have with you. A good act makes you feel good later on. The godly soul is perpetual. The animal soul is temporary, but that's why it's constantly wanting stuff. So anything you want that's not productive That's on the other side. Anything that's productive, that's good. Now, the challenge is, we'll end off on this point, the challenge is the Yetzer Hara, that evil inclination, skews the decision. Because it should be very simple, right? You know, salad, potato knish. I mean, come on, you know, right? You know, sushi with all the toppings or whatever it is, the hamburger fill in the blank, or you know. The Yetzer Hara says, no, the knish is also nutritional. Like we said that joke from Bill Cosby. Chocolate cake has all the pyramid, eggs, sugar, right? No, it's perfect, right? But now coming Rosh Hashanah, we got to do a cheshbon nefesh. We got to do an account of what's productive and what's not. We have to try to rectify and recertify and redirect ourselves towards good, and try to put aside the unproductive. Doesn't mean tomorrow you're gonna wake up tomorrow and say, okay, I'm a holy person. I have no desire for chocolate cake anymore. And hamburgers have no control over me. Well, it doesn't work that way. It's a process. Just like an animal is a process, raising children is a process. So too, if you give into every indulgence you want, so all of a sudden one day decide that now I have absolute self-control. It's a process. But comes to Rosh Hashanah, we have to try to take a step in the right direction. Questions? I think next week we're going to serve coffee because some guys are.
It's not really a good idea. Don't try
No? Yeah,